Dean Baquet, executive editor of the New York Times, responded a second time to our undercover investigation into the New York Times, and he clearly doesn't like us.
James O'Keefe is a guy who happens to be conservative, who goes out and tries to trick journalists into saying inappropriate things, and then he puts them on his website. A journalist has to have at his heart or her heart a desire to make society better. All James O'Keefe is trying to do is hurt institutions and get some clicks.
Dean Baquet, since you've assigned motive to my heart, let me actually speak to our motivation. For us, it's not about clicks, but your paper and your business model is about clicks. One of your senior editors was on tape saying as much, saying it's about a Trump bump and it's about feeding the readers what they want to read.
Since the election, speaking on, for the New York Times, our subscriptions have skyrocketed since, and they call it the Trump bump. The Trump bump.
Well, let me actually define journalism, Dean Baquet. Journalism is about exposing the world for what it is, and it's the discrepancy between how the world is and how it's presented by the mainstream media, which provides the motivation for people like me to go out and do investigative reporting. But don't take my word for it. Let me quote legendary investigative reporter Clarence Jones. Clarence Jones was an absolutely amazing undercover reporter in the 70s and 80s who went to expose crooked cops, the railroad industries in Florida, gambling operations. He went after the sacred cows. He went to places that no one dared to go. And one of the things that Clarence Jones wrote in his book was that his goal was always to go where no other reporter had been, to show the readers what was really happening. He wanted to tell the story so the readers felt like they were actually there. And when prompted by people about why on earth he would do this type of reporting, he wrote in his religious belief that a democracy cannot work unless there is a free press, where reporters and editors spend their lives getting at the truth of how their leaders and elected officials do their job, and then tell the world what they find. Here's the thing. I'd like to think that we model our efforts after Clarence Jones, but I think that Dean Baquet doesn't get that because he's looking at it through the lens of his own defensiveness after being exposed. The New York Times is a sacred cow, and very similar in scope to some of the operations that Clarence Jones exposed.
He managed to trick a very young videographer, not even a very young employee of the video unit of the New York Times into saying some outlandish things because he was a young guy who wanted to have a conversation with a woman.
We tricked him? We didn't trick your employee from doing anything. That's not a correct characterization. That's an ad hominem attack. The employee volunteered this information that you described and behavior that you described was unethical on his part. Baquet seems to excuse his employees lying and focuses on our techniques of using undercover journalism. Let's talk about undercover journalism for a second and where it stands in media today. The vaunted mainstream media outlets ABC News and CBC have taken this form, this undercover technique, to a new low. Let's talk about that for a second.
You're at a toy store when you see a mother preventing her son from getting what she considers a girl's toy, worried about how it might change him.
Undercover journalism used to be a very serious and well-regarded. In recent years, it's gone out of fashion because of market forces and lawsuits. It has appeared in these news magazine shows as a sort of entertainment.
Donald Trump is now the president of the United States, so we're testing the Trump effect.
Can I ask why you believe in those slogans? Do you not think that's racist rhetoric? Can you give me an example of what you're going to be saying today?
Sure, let me get into character. So I'll say, make Canada great again. Worldwide, white power. Things like that. Strong words. Words I'd never expect to come out of my mouth, but it is a role.
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
While these shows have done well in the ratings, they don't actually expose any abuse or corruption. They use the hidden camera technique as a device, as a bazooka, to kill a fly, going after pedestrians, innocent bystanders, reacting to things they conjure up. We don't go after innocent pedestrians and people using conjured up things. We go after powerful organizations who can retaliate against us. And that's why these news magazine shows and large corporations don't do what they do, because they're afraid.
What James O'Keefe did in jeopardizing that kid's career was awful. I don't think it's journalism. I think it's just complete, it's destructive, it's dishonest. He lied about who he was, his employees lied about who they were. No, I don't think that's journalism.
Baquet minimizes our journalism. We think because our investigations don't fit his biased narrative agenda. When Mother Jones released the famous 47% clip, the New York Times reported it without reservation.
There are 47% of the people who will vote for the president no matter what. All right, there are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they are victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything.
Did Billy Bush trick Donald Trump into making that comment? We all know the mainstream media loved the Trump recording. Virtually nobody talked about the fact that the recording may have been illegally taped. But that's the thing. It seems if the story fits their agenda, all bets are off. And they tend to retreat into their ivory tower and criticize those of us who are willing to get our hands a little dirty in order to expose the truth and make the world a better place. We're looking forward to more reactions from Dean Baquet coming soon, because there's a lot more to come.